Hello, we're here at the Center of Natural Oncology in Del Mar, California, near San Diego. I have some distinguished guests here. On my right is Dr. Alan Schwartz, Director of Holistic Resource Center in Agora Hills, California. And on my left is prominent American chemist, Mr. Vincent Gamel, who is the Director of Natural Oncology,
The
Center for Natural Oncology. We're here to talk about Professor Kachatrian's protocol as it applies to some of the patients, some of the initial clinical trials on a smaller scale that were performed here in California, and talk about what's known as the K effect. I will pass I will have Dr. Schwartz to start, talk a little bit about the center, the Holistic Resource Center, and then we'll have Vincent Gamel to discuss some of his experiences with what's known as the K effect. And here's Dr. Alan Schwartz.
I was privileged to have Dr. Kachatrian, a distinguished Russian scientist and physician, visit our Holistic Resource Center in Agora, California. I had heard a lot about his work for probably the better part of a year prior to his arrival at our clinic. And Dr. Kachatrian had invited me to bring some patients to Russia, specifically cancer patients, to show how quickly his protocol could reverse cancers. I was enthusiastic about doing that, but due to the cost and other complications involved with the trip to Russia, I wasn't able to get sufficient patients who volunteered to go. And Dr. Kachatrian graciously agreed to come to the United States to see patients at our clinic, not only with cancer, but with a variety of other debilitating conditions, and demonstrate the efficacy of his protocols. The protocols involved basically electrically charged water solutions with specific pHs, that is acidities or alkalinities, and the use of beneficial probiotic organisms given both orally, rectally, and in other manners to people with a variety of health conditions. Dr. Kachatrian mentioned that he had been studying these protocols and perfecting them and refining them over a long period of time, many, many years, on literally tens of thousands of patients. Initially, he was getting very good experiences, he relates, with allergies and other allergic conditions like asthma, and also with people with intestinal complaints like colitis. And in more recent years, he started working with cancer patients. He sent me information by email about a number of cancer patients, specifically 5 patients with stomach cancers, all of whom had advanced cancers, and all of whom seemed to reverse those cancers in a relatively short time. When he came to the clinic, he also had brought with him some videos and other tapes of interviews with his patients in Russia and with other physicians who had evaluated those patients. I was particularly impressed with one very cachectic patient with tuberculosis and cancer who looked like a walking skeleton. Wouldn't have thought that this patient could possibly have been cured of his cancer, as the patient's nutritional condition was so depleted. The patient did ultimately succumb, Dr. Kachatrian mentioned, from the tuberculosis. However, at autopsy, the cancer was totally gone, and I thought this was absolutely incredible, as it takes a good functioning immune system in order to get rid of cancers in most cases, and in this person was certainly nutritionally deficient, would be expected to have had a highly depleted immune system. Dr. Kachatrian's protocol involves a very unique and, to me, a very startling concept, which is that you can pass electrons in a special bath through a completely sealed bag of electrolyte solution, and by so doing charge that bag electrically such that it has a very high oxidation reduction potential. I was skeptical because the bag is made of a plastic material that theoretically shouldn't conduct electricity. Nevertheless, he demonstrated to my satisfaction, and that also of Dr. Vincent Gamble, that this can be done. And the way we demonstrate this is by measuring the oxidation reduction potential and the pH of the solution prior to Dr. Kachatrian's using his special techniques to charge the solution, and then measuring it afterwards. And the difference was certainly very significant and consistent from batch to batch. Dr. Kachatrian uses this usually as a Ringer's lactate or other salt solution, like a normal sodium chloride solution, to infuse these electrons into the body, and this is given usually as an IV drip over a short period of time. He uses specific pH adjusted solutions for enemas depending on the nature of the condition that he's treating. And in this short discussion time, I won't be going into extreme details in this regard. There's usually a 3-day period where most people start off with an acid enema, and then they get an alkaline adjusted water enema generally after that, although again this will vary a little from condition to condition. They're also, in Russia I understand, allowed to be immersed in baths with electrically charged water solutions. In the United States we didn't have access to that at our clinic, but we were using a nebulized solution that he prepared, again with the electrically charged water. It's a well-known fact that cell membranes must maintain a potential difference between the outside and inside of the membrane in order for the cell to be healthy. These membranes not only surround the cell, but they surround the nucleus and all the organelles inside the cell, like the mitochondria. The potential difference must be maintained, and if it drops, the cell isn't able to pump various and sundry things in and out that it needs in order to maintain its healthy status. One of the considerations I gave as to why Dr. Kachatrian's protocols were helpful is that I believe that by charging the electrically appropriately charged solutions, that you're reinvigorating the cells and maintaining the cell membrane potential that is necessary for maintaining the health of the cell, although this appears to be something that we need to further investigate in terms of the mechanism. The other thought I had is that a lot of health depends on the correct balance between creating free radicals and neutralizing excessive free radicals in the body. The way to neutralize free radicals is to use antioxidants, which basically are chemicals that give up their electrons freely. There is no better antioxidant than free electrons themselves. They will neutralize the free radicals, which are electron stealing agents. And by providing this highly electrically charged solution, Dr. Kachatrian has come up with the ultimate antioxidant. So by neutralizing free radicals and by normalizing cellular membranes, he is almost instantly making cells healthier. And Dr. Kachatrian's protocols are not predicated as cancer healers or healers of any specific disease. They make the body healthy, and a healthy body can normalize itself and get rid of disease conditions. And this does appear to be what was going on. We gave Dr. Kachatrian in the 6 weeks that he was at our clinic close to 40 patients with a variety of illnesses, most of whom had cancers, but some of whom had chronic fatigue conditions and allergic conditions, and in the case of one lady, a chronic ulcerative colitis condition which had not responded over many years and had to be controlled with methotrexate and high doses of prednisone, and even then not with complete success. To summarize, and we did taped interviews with all patients at the beginning, at the middle, and at the end of the therapy sessions, we had very consistently good results with very few exceptions. There was one lady with chronic fatigue who did not improve appreciably. But invariably, just about every patient on the protocol noticed definitive improvements in their general well-being. If they had lost weight, they tended to gain weight. If they didn't have energy, they tended to get more energy. If they were having intestinal disruptions or upsets, those tended to go away. In terms of our cancer patients, we didn't have anybody with stomach cancers. We've had many of them with breast cancer of a variety of sorts. One lady with inflammatory breast cancer improved marginally, but she was not a great success. Several others with more traditional forms of breast cancer did quite well, and at least 3 of them appeared to have no evidence of the cancer at the end of the 3 weeks of therapy, as determined by both cancer markers and also by PET CT scans. So we were getting objective data as well as anecdotal information from the patients who felt that they were doing well. One patient who came to me originally before Dr. Kachatrian saw him with metastatic esophageal cancer had had 2 chemotherapy sessions, which are a confounding factor in determining the success of this therapy. But they made him profoundly ill, and he did not continue those for that reason. He came to me brought by his daughter, and this was an elderly gentleman, and he was wheelchair bound. I started him on nutritional therapies, which did improve his status to some degree, but the 3 weeks of the Kachatrian protocol really was the icing on the cake. He had lost something like 40 pounds and gained 30 pounds back, and this wasn't edema fluid, this was healthy muscle tissue. His well-being improved dramatically. He went from wheelchair bound to being able to walk and get around, to drive his own car, and he had a lot of energy. His appetite improved, and his bowel movements, which had been abnormal, improved as well. So we counted him as a great success. Another patient that we saw was an Armenian American with chronic fatigue and a chronic anemia of unknown origin. And after 3 weeks, he improved clinically to the point where he was able to drive again. Previously, his wife had to drive him everywhere, and he barely could get out of bed, and now he was able to walk and get along. Clinically, he had improved, and objective criteria, which include his blood test, showed a slight but significant improvement in his blood parameters, so he was less anemic in just a 3-week period, which is a very short period of time. Dr. Kachatrian's protocols also involve the infusion of specific beneficial flora, which he's been working with in Russia for a long period of time. The studies on beneficial flora in the literature are replete, and there are tens of thousands of studies backing up their benefits, which are confirmed and also maintained by Dr. Kachatrian's techniques in terms of the results that he's been getting over the years. In the 6 weeks we were doing the protocol at our clinic, I would have to say that I went from being somewhat skeptical to a believer that these protocols definitely work. The patients were very happy with these protocols. They often referred their friends and relatives. We had one lady with breast cancer who started out, who felt so well during the protocol that she brought her brother with prostate cancer in, and he did well. His studies also showed dramatic improvement with a drop in PSA at the end of the study. And her two sisters who had other conditions that also improved. And they referred other people as well. I suggested that Dr. Kachatrian introduce his protocols to Vince Gamble, a man I admire greatly because he has an encyclopedic knowledge of everything that has to do with cancer therapies, both conventional and alternative, and is dedicating his life to curing cancer and finding ways to do this. He started the Center for Natural Oncology a number of years ago, and when I visited him a number of years ago, I was really super impressed with his abilities and his knowledge and his unique approaches to cancer therapy. He's just been introduced to Dr. Kachatrian recently, and I will not attempt to speak for him in that regard. And this is early in the game as far as he's concerned, as we've just started some of his patients on Dr. Kachatrian's protocol. However, one of the things Dr. Kachatrian does is, in terms of the probiotics, is that he doesn't believe that giving the capsules of probiotic themselves, which is the traditional way of giving it, or as powders, is the most efficacious method. He believes that the cultures actually have to be living and in a replicative phase in order to get the maximum benefit. So he tends to make yogurts out of various substances, generally milk and milk products, but can be made with soy and other substances for people with intolerances to dairy. And these, again, I was skeptical of, but noticed in my own health that they had dramatic improvements in my own benefits and my own health conditions. And I had been taking probiotics before without any benefit. So I saw firsthand as I went through the protocols myself, just to see what they felt like, that they were beneficial in my case. I would like to now turn the talk over to Dr. Vincent Gamble, who is a chemist who has, again, as I said, a knowledge of all things cancer in terms of cures and approaches, and will get his opinion about Dr. Kachatrian's effect.
Thank you very much, Dr. Schwartz. And then, without further ado, is Dr. Vincent Gamble.
I first personally met Dr. Kachatrian about 6 weeks ago when he was doing his study with Dr. Schwartz. I didn't quite know what to think. I wasn't familiar with a strategy, a non-medicinal but sensible strategy for cancer. His is a physiological therapy. And I thought, oh, that's going to make the drug companies really happy. But it requires no medicines at all. He brought with him much electronic equipment, some of which I could identify, various water ionizers, but also certain, I guess, electronic and magnetic equipment that was all new to me. It was all, I guess, specially made. The treatment, which I did myself, and am doing myself, I'm 2 weeks into it now, seems to be divided into 2 stages. The first stage lasts about 4 days, and that is a complete detox. That's tight control of the diet, where one eats nothing but yogurt, the narine yogurt. Dr. Kachatrian teaches the participant to make his own, which is very easy to do. It's a very tasty yogurt. It's not as, perhaps not as sour is some yogurts, and some people who don't like yogurt find it most pleasant, almost like a natural sweetness, like a melted ice cream maybe. I've had no problem making it myself. It takes about 12 hours. We do that and the enemas. Now, the enemas, a daily enema of about 1.5 liters of water, of ionized water, and he uses different ionized solutions at different parts of the program. Americans tend not to be used to doing enemas, and I wasn't. Many cancer patients are, because it's been kind of a very common thing to use coffee enemas and various other colonic infusions and purges that for cancer patients, among those who practice alternative therapy. But we haven't been big on it. We haven't encouraged it or discouraged it. But having an open mind and wanting to try it myself, I tried it and I found it to be, it's not the most pleasant thing in the world. 1.5 liters, my eyes widened when I first saw the size of that bag. It was about 1.5 quarts.
Your eyes have been widened too, I suspect.
But Dr. Kachatrian was insistent, but at the same time kind of tolerant with me. He told me if I could do a half a bag and then the other half a bag if I was going to be a sissy about it. But soon enough, I was able to continue on. Now, it's only during about half the protocol that you do the enemas. You have to be completely cleaned out first. So in other words, he's sterilizing the gut, both from the north and the south. So after that is done, he implants the coliforms, special coliforms that he uses back into the gut, into a clean gut. And this he uses about 100 centimeter, a 42-inch line that he feeds up. And again, my eyes widened. But he has to implant this in the ascending colon, the transverse colon, and the descending colon. It's very important that he gets all areas of this because he wants to establish a well-established colony of bacteria. At that time, thankfully, the enemas cease. And but the rest of the program, by way of the diet, fairly straightforward, not that difficult for most Americans. Fish is not very popular with Dr. Kachatrian, but he does allow meats. He's very, very insistent that if at all possible, get as organic and as natural foods and as fresh foods as possible. He would almost have a heart attack, it would seem, when he would go through the refrigerator and see some of the things that some of the program participants here purchase on their own and what they eat. And so he does lecture, takes a very personal interest in each of the patients. Everyone seems to really love the guy. He's very, very, very personable. I have not yet finished the protocol. I don't have cancer myself, and so I can't speak to that. All I've really noticed about myself, first of all, almost immediately, Dr. Kachatrian diagnosed chronic fatigue in me. And I thought, well, that's not quite the case. The fact is, I get very little sleep. I work so much that I rarely get more than 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night, and spend much of the day coffeeed up. And it's just a fact of my life. But as I've done his protocol, I've noticed that I require far less coffee. At first, I had to sneak off a bit to get a little coffee, just to keep going. But lately, I've noticed I just don't require as much. I just don't flag as much in the afternoon as I was before. So that is really the only change that I've noticed in myself. And the participants here, we're only about 2 weeks into the program. I've noticed one patient with cancer patient with edema in her lower body edema starting to go away. This is very important with cancer patients, with end-stage cancer patients. It's usually a bad sign when you see that sort of edema. Everyone in general seems to be healthier. I haven't seen, miracles that, praise Jesus type of miracles. Nothing seems to happen that quickly. It requires a little bit of a patience. But I've seen only forward progress with each patient that has been doing it. The progress seems to begin almost immediately with the detox and just continues straight on as he switches over to the rest of the program, where he switches the solutions, both the oral solutions. It seems to be very important that the oral solutions are used on an empty stomach, both prior to eating and after on an empty stomach, that is several times a day. So there's a constant shifting back and forth of the various acid and alkaline solutions, and part of it is very individualized, depending on the type of cancer the person has or the type of chronic disease the person has. This seems to be very important. The feeling I get about this is that the therapy seems to work in the chronic diseases associated with aging. We haven't seen it or haven't tried it at all with any children. Children do get cancer, but the cancers children get tend to be the embryonic cancers, the rhabdomyosarcomas or the lymphocytic leukemias, but they don't get the pancreatic cancer, stomach cancers, ovarian cancers, all the cancers that come with senescence of the immune function with aging, or the other diseases, the arthritis, the heart disease associated with aging. And in this sense, it seems to make a person younger, that we become young again in how our physiology works. So I imagine there's something here to do with the detox followed by the cell signaling, by revamping somehow the cell signaling that really makes us younger again. Now, with some of the solutions that we were using, Dr. Kachaturian tells me, he said, hey, it makes the skin younger too. And he says, use it in this way and that way, and you just watch it turn around. And there have been some people that have been trying it, and I can't see over a week or two. The participants that have been doing this seem to be impressed, but I don't know if it's a placebo effect but we'll see over the course of the next 6 months and the next year. But it does seem to make a person younger, at least from the inside. So I don't know what else I can say at this point.
Well, I think you've said plenty, and I thank you for it. I'm very grateful to these wonderful, distinguished scientists, researchers, doctors, for expressing their opinion, for sharing their experience associated with Professor Kachaturian's protocol. I think it's wonderful that Professor Kachaturian, with the help of his friends and colleagues, found the time and the courage to come to the United States and to try to help the American citizens, the Americans, people, friendly nation, to always had great admiration for the Russian culture and science, and now the American citizens would be able to directly benefit from his knowledge, from his experience, because it certainly transcends all the borders. And we all wish him well and wish him luck, and we expect nothing but wonderful things to come.